Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi there, everybody. Welcome. Let me get right to it here. I've got a number of education stories to bring up right here off the top. I have one piece of jab-related audio that I want to play of a postpartum nurse who was also a whistleblower describing her experience. And other than that, let me get into it here. First of all, there are a number of local education issues taking place where I live. And I'm going to go through a great deal of this. And I want people again to understand that when I bring up local issues, it's not just here that this is taking place. This is across the board. This is in every kind of school district. It doesn't matter if it's public, private, or charter. This is happening across the nation. And again, there are numerous red flags, of course, as you would expect. And they're not just red flags, they're characteristics of a criminal organization. And this is what people have to fully understand. And unfortunately, many of the attending public has no idea that they are actually sending their children to a criminal organization. And that's what these school districts are. It's what they all are. So first, let me start with this. I played this in the last war video, and this is a very recent audio clip of Franklin County, Ohio, my apologies, which is Columbus, certainly, and the school districts within the Columbus area. They are having trouble, as it turns out, with their literacy and what they call, of course, their pre-kindergarten preparedness. And what they're finding out is that minority students who are not white, are showing up to their schools and they are not prepared for kindergarten as far as the school district is concerned. Again, they don't know letters, they don't know shapes, they don't know colors, and it's probably far worse than that. In some cases, they probably can't even write. The irony in all of this is that, well, number one, this isn't unusual. And number two, the individuals who are actually conducting these surveys and conducting these evaluations are not white themselves. And they can't for the life of them figure out what's actually happening. Now again, this goes way past race. I mean, it certainly is involved in this particular case, but it's also involved when it comes to culture. And what's the trend that we've seen across the entire nation when it comes to certain races achieving over others? Or certainly certain cultures achieving over others? Instead of separating the individuals and then working with individuals at different speeds, so to speak, they dumb everything down for everybody. Because what they don't want to do is they don't want to highlight the fact that certain races are doing better or worse than another. But what's interesting about this news report, which you'll hear in just a minute, is that they openly admit that this is the case. They openly admit that white students are achieving and far more prepared, so they think, for kindergarten, way more so than any other race of individual who is showing up. I mean, this is one hell of an admission. Now, on top of that, they make a bit of a leap and they say, well, if you're not prepared for kindergarten, then you're not going to be prepared for middle school and you're not going to be prepared for high school. You'll have a harder time graduating, and then what happens after graduation, and then you won't succeed at all, and blah, blah, blah. All of that is a bit misleading. It's a bit foolish to make such a leap on something like that if someone's not prepared for kindergarten, then they're not going to graduate from high school and they'll be a failure their whole life. I mean, that's a bit much. But even so, with that aside, they openly admit again that white students are far more prepared and that they need to do whatever they need to do, so they say, in order to get minority students more prepared for kindergarten. Now, I could just rail on this for probably about 50 minutes at least, but you've heard me say in the past again, as far as Thomas Jefferson was concerned, and he had it pegged all the way back then, even before 1776, in his very early writings, he openly stated, not everybody is educatable. That this is, in fact, a familial and cultural difference that does exist. And yes, in some cases, it certainly does exist among races. It's not to say that it's race-specific. It's just that it depends on, again, the culture around the individuals, the emphasis that people put on education, and then, of course, and this is the unfortunate part, the emphasis that people put on government raising children. Individuals who, again, know that government has no business raising children spend more time with their children preparing their children, getting them to read and write at a very young age. Not to mention, those skills are innate in us. We want to read, we want to write. It's right there. We just need very basic modeling and very basic training and education in order to break through that shell, and then we're off and running and we're doing it on our own. So I'm going to play this audio here. Again, not everybody's educatable, but now they have their hands full. And they have their hands full because and this is of course what they're not going to admit to, they're never going to admit that all of the other programs, games, gimmicks, and nonsense are actually a colossal waste of money, time, and energy and focus. And what they could be doing is they could be using the McGuffey readers from a very early age. You're not going to find a set of the McGuffey readers in a preschool or elementary school, I should say, classroom. Certainly not kindergarten. It's the only book that they need. It's the only one that they need to walk around with. It's basic phonics, and unfortunately, phonics isn't even taught anymore. It's all sight words. It's just memorization and visual recognition. You don't even have to repeat the word. You just have to look at it. Somebody says, "Does this look like this word?" And then the kid says, "Yes." That's not literacy training. That's stupidity. It's actual retardation when it comes to actual instruction. It's retarded instruction. And I mean that literally. It is the slowing down of instruction and the retardation of actual instruction, which, of course, what impact is that going to have on the child? Not a good one. So give this audio a listen here. Again, this is from the Local 4 news outlet in Columbus, Ohio, in 3, 2, 1.
For the first time, a Franklin County nonprofit has its hands on data that could be an important step in addressing the kindergarten readiness crisis in the area. Future Ready 5 says more than half the children in Franklin County are not ready for kindergarten, but the nonprofit, along with partners like the City of Columbus, are hoping to change that. NBC4's Isabel Cleary shows us how.
Future Ready 5 received funding from the city back in January. They developed and carried out tests and now are getting a first look at how kindergarten readiness levels, which they are calling a crisis, can be addressed. In March, 162 students across 11 early child care centers sat down and took a test.
We're really thinking about how to empower our educators in this space and providing them with the training and the resources for them to really elevate their profession in a way that maybe has not been done before.
The questions, such as spell your name and point to this color, may sound simple, but the answers help Future Ready 5 figure out where kids are struggling and the best ways to help them.
Not everybody knows what it means to be kindergarten ready, but we believe if you know better, you do better.
The results from the first round of testing are coming in. Future Ready 5 says some of the statistics are alarming.
We've identified that there's a 20% gap in total scores on our assessment between Black and white children in ages 3 to 5. And so that's a pretty significant gap.
The data shows that in every category, white children performed better than Black and mixed race children, sometimes by as much as 30%.
And it's kind of sad and disheartening, to be honest with you, heartbreaking that it turns out that there are significant racial disparities as low as 3, 4, and 5 years old.
The lowest scores were in the ability to recognize parts of sentences and words, as well as vocabulary and oral language. Future Ready 5 says these are fundamental when it comes to successfully learning to read.
If a child is not ready for kindergarten, oftentimes they may not be ready for the third grade reading guarantee or their 8th grade assessment and high school graduation and beyond.
Now, Future Ready 5 is working with parents and teachers to develop ways to improve those scores, including training sessions. The goal is to expand this program in the fall to about 500 students. The idea is to have it blanket the entire county by 2030 so every child who needs help can get it. Local for you in Columbus, I'm Isabel Cleary, NBC4.
I hope that you can see the constant reoccurring pattern here, because it really is glaring in my opinion. It's constant. Parents relinquish their responsibility to teach their own children by simply saying, well, I've never been a teacher, I don't know what that's like, I can't do it, I quit. and then they hand over their child to government, and then government becomes overwhelmed. Government is always underprepared. Government never has the tools that they need in order to handle the influx of the problem that they themselves have created by simply saying, trust us where government give us your kids. They never have the resources available. And by resources, I quite literally mean money, and then, of course, the right people in place. And then, of course, they have to build new programs, so they say. And we want to build this program and make it available to everybody who wants it, and then we want to grow it, and blah, 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 blah. What you're seeing is you're seeing more of an emphasis now being pushed on preschool. The constant game of needing more preschool now. Please come to our preschool because we want to help prepare your child for kindergarten, and then they will be more successful, so we think, the older that they get as the years go by. Preschool is a scam. Always has been, always will be. This is the job of parents. This is what parents are supposed to do in a strong nuclear family. This is the point. And again, you can teach your children to read and write at a very young age. They're right there. They want to. They're right on the cusp of always wanting to break through and do it themselves. Once you break through that shell, like I said earlier, then they can do everything on their own by and large. But having government create well, they do create more problems, but create more programs, that of course costs more money, and it's money that they don't have. Now, there was an interesting visualization in the video aspect of this, which you can see in the war video if you go back and watch it there, and I also put this video on Gab. But again, I'm just painting a picture here. My big problem has always been, what kind of people are you actually hiring to do the training to teach children to read and write? And the fact is they are hiring just about anybody off the street who wants to get paid to, quote unquote, work with kids, so they say. These are not literacy experts. These are not individuals with degrees from past days in education or in teacher education. These are not individuals, again, who have experience learning about the history of literacy. Certainly, they've never read the McGuffey readers or even looked at them. Hell, they don't even know what they are. But these are the individuals doing the so-called teaching of these children to try to get them up to speed, so they think, so that they are either prepared for kindergarten or the grades well into elementary school, and so on and so on. The well is dry. They're not hiring the right people. They're just looking for bodies. And then they train the person very quickly by giving them packets of information and visuals, and then again they have them sit down with the child. The child looks confused, as is the case here. It was a giant, overweight black woman, huge nails, hair back, and she's pointing very quickly at this flip-up chart in front of this one kid, and the kid's eyes are as big as saucers, and they don't have any idea what the hell is going on. Again, they're hiring the wrong people. Regardless of race, they're just hiring the wrong people. They're not qualified. But this, again, is the entire business. This is the business in a nutshell. The most ethical people don't want to do this anymore. They don't want to be in this business anymore. And as I've said before, everybody's trying to pick up mercury with a fork because they recognize that these children are coming into their school systems and they can't spell their own name on a piece of paper. They can't read a sentence. The irony of all of this, too, is that they don't seem to understand the role of a teacher in a school building. They don't seem to understand that either. That it is their job to actually teach children how to read and write. But that ended a long time ago. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. I'm certain it happens some places. But I mean, use me as an example. I mean, they weren't teaching us to read and write within school. They were just going through material on a constant basis without even wondering whether or not children knew how to read and write. That's why me personally, I received outside of school tutoring on how to read and write and picked it up rather quickly once it was done correctly. Again, therein lies the problem. But as soon as I put that story up on Gab, Sicily in New Mexico sent me a story very recent here, also from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it was titled, New Mexico PED aims to boost child literacy rates with summer reading program. This is from Albuquerque, New Mexico. It says recent data shows that only 38% of New Mexico students are proficient at reading. 38%. It says state leaders say that that's way too low, no kidding. And they're spending big bucks to turn things around. KOB4 spoke with our public education department secretary about the so-called summer reading boot camp. That's how Governor Michelle Lujan Wuhan Grisham described it when she asked state lawmakers for $30 million to help boost literacy rates statewide. Again, it's just money. They just throw money at it. Yes, more money, that'll teach them how to read. It's so cheap and so easy to teach a child to read that it's laughable. But they waste copious amounts of money on these programs, these games, these gimmicks, all of this nonsense, when you can actually just buy the McGuffey readers on Amazon for, well, it depends on which kinds you want. You want the paperback, it's a whole lot cheaper, or the hardback editions. And you're talking about a series of, 7 books. You get them in the hands of those children. They immediately start their phonics. They're reading out loud. You always have them read out loud, never silently, because they need to hear their own voice saying these words as they're starting to actually recognize these words so that they know how they sound. It's kind of a big deal. And you just make sure that every student has a copy and that they walk around with it. It is their book. It becomes the book that they pay attention to. Not 5 books, not 10 books with all these different colors and shapes and rainbow images and all this nonsense. They don't need any of that. They just need a book. A book. And then, of course, once an individual gets further into the McGuffey readers, what you start finding out are the moral messages that exist inside of those. That's where the comprehension starts to take over then. See, now they're way past phonics. They're starting to pronounce words correctly and letters correctly, creating words, of course, and then it goes right into full-blown sentences, very small sentences, and then smaller paragraphs, and then small stories. And then again, those small stories tend to be centered around moral values. Someone does something good, someone does something bad, recognizing the difference between the two. The McGuffey readers also say God's name in them consistently. This is important. This matters. This is one of the reasons, of course, why you don't find McGuffey readers in American K12 schools, because they detest God. We know this. This is a real thing. But anyway, Cicely sent me this again, and I want to play this audio for you. Again, throwing money at the problem is not going to fix anything. In particular, when that money is being thrown at people who are not qualified to do this. And say, for example, one more side note. Say, for example, someone like me got hired to do this. And I walked in there and they said, okay, Dr. Brooks, we've got all of this material. We've got all of this content. Here's what we'd like you to do. And I looked at them and I said, I'm not going to do any of this. I have a copy of the McGuffey readers right here. This student is going to take a copy home. I have a copy. We're going to read this at the same time, out loud, together. We're going to go through it page by page. And they're going to learn how to read in less than 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, they will read this entire book by themselves, flawlessly. And they'll know it because they will now start to be able to comprehend what it is that they're reading. They would look at me and they would say, yeah, we're not going to do that, and we don't want to use that. We have this material over here that we would like to use, and we would like you to use this material. Therein lies the problem. The people steering the ship don't know how to steer a ship. And there are still people walking around the matrix actually believing that the education system is going to survive. It is a business doomed to fail. So let it fail. And this right here again is more writing on the wall of what happens when your business is tanking. They're rearranging deck furniture on the Titanic and the entire thing is sinking. So here's that audio from KOB4 out of New Mexico in 3, 2, 1.
Reading is the foundation for all learning.
There is perhaps nothing more important for our children to learn than how to read. It's, of course, a critical life skill, but unfortunately, many New Mexican children are struggling just to keep up.
Yeah, in fact, the most recent data shows only 38% of New Mexico students are proficient at reading. State leaders say that is way too low, and they're spending big bucks to try and turn things around.
Griffin Rushton spoke with our Public Education Department secretary about the so-called summer reading boot camp.
Yeah, that's how the governor described it when she asked state lawmakers for $30 million to help boost literacy rates statewide. Teachers will tell you far too many students in our state just can't read at their grade level, and there's just not enough time during the school year to go back and teach them. But there is plenty of time this summer. Registration is now open for the PED's free summer reading program. It's a 4 to 6 week curriculum meant to give your kids an extra boost with the books, and that's just the beginning.
If we can provide students with opportunities to become better readers and writers, it's going to support them in math, science, social studies.
And that list keeps going. But it all starts with knowing how to read.
Right now, we are at 38% reading proficiency at grade level across New Mexico. We're looking at making sure that this is going to give us a boost to really get to the next level.
The Public Education Department's summer reading program kicks off next month. It's a 4 to 6 week boot camp offering kindergartners through 8th graders a chance to catch up on their reading skills before the next school year.
Think of it as like a summer school program where it's going to be specifically around structured literacy and the science of reading.
PED Secretary Dr. Arsenio Romero says students will spend 4 hours a day working with instructors in small groups, ideally no more than 4 students. And it's not just story time.
It's really going to focus on phonemic awareness, on phonics, on making sure that we have those foundational skills in place.
The program is completely free for New Mexico families. Romero says classes will happen inside schools all over the state, and they're making sure all types of students can attend.
We're going to be able to provide transportation. We're also going to be able to provide that breakfast and lunch.
Romero says at least 3,000 students are already registered, and there's room for up to 10,000. But they could use more instructors.
We're looking for teachers, retired teachers, educational assistants. We're looking at out-of-school time partners. We are looking at anybody that really has an interest in working with kids.
And he says they'll earn $35 an hour.
We know that this is going to work. We're already starting to see those gains, especially in districts that have really bought into structured literacy. So this is going to be our next step in New Mexico to get us to the next step, to the next level.
You can register your student for the program or sign up to be an instructor at literacy.nm.gov. We're going to post that link up on KOB.com. Back to you.
Do you see what I mean? That was the first time I've heard that audio. It really was. That guy basically highlighted every single point that I just made earlier. Everything that should be happening, but everything that they're doing that is still wrong. He said we're focusing on phonics. Great. That's what school teachers should be doing from the start. That's the point. That should always be the focus, but it isn't, is it? The technology tools that they use for children to teach them how to so-called read and write in school involve staring at a laptop with headphones on your head, clicking on particular things and moving letters and words around so that they match up. It's a game. They play games online. They're not actually saying anything. They're hearing some things from time to time, but they're never verbalizing it. That's a huge problem. I mean, that is phonics. You're supposed to look at it, hear how it sounds, and say it. It's the last part that's always being missed with these technology tools that they think are the greatest thing since sliced bread. That's the first issue. But I'm glad he claims to be focusing on phonics. But, that's another question as to whether or not that's really happening. You heard him also say that they're interested in hiring people at $35 an hour who just like to be around kids. What kind of a vetting process do you have for these kinds of people? They're not hiring the best and the brightest. You even heard him say they wanted retired teachers. Good luck. Good flippin' luck. The well's dry. when people leave the business, only the brainwashed want to actually go back. Once they're gone, they're gone. Endless examples I could bring up of people that I know who have left the business and they never go back. They just aren't going to be hiring the best people. And there would have to be a training program of some kind. Again, somebody applies on their website, yeah, I'm looking to work with kids for $35 an hour, so when do I get paid? And then they go, well, wait a minute, what is it that you'd like to do? And, we have a reading program here, a boot camp. Can you help them read? And they go, yeah, I can do that. I mean, come on. Who are they hiring for this? Is this going to actually help and move things forward, or is it actually going to set children back? Is it going to be a summer daycare all over again? Again, those were two stories from Ohio and New Mexico. Ohio is somewhere in the, top 15, top 16 states in the United States when it comes to literacy. New Mexico is toward the bottom. Now again, don't think for a minute that this is just happening in those two states. This is happening everywhere. It's in every state. They're constantly panicking. You have endless schools that are closing right now. And I wanted to make this known very briefly also. I also played a piece of audio in the last war video from a year ago of one of the school board presidents, or the school board president rather, for the Seattle public school system. They have 70 elementary schools and 20 of them are about to close for this upcoming year. 20. Why is that? Because more people are homeschooling. This is a massive victory. This is a good thing. Now, what this also shows, and it ties directly into the literacy stuff from just a minute ago, is that it shows that the other policies and programs that these schools have in place, that they believe are creating compliant students and students who are listening and doing their work and doing what they're supposed to do, are actually a colossal waste of time and a failure. I'm going to bring one of them up very specifically, which I've brought up in the past, and it's PBIS, the whole positive behavior interventions and supports. This is a massive failure. Why? Of a million reasons. But when it comes to literacy, PBIS always teaches children to be compliant, to rat out your fellow classmates if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and oh, by the way, not learning will become your reward. So if you do what the teacher asks you to do, we will reward you with useless monetary or materialistic nonsense and time-wasting games so that the teacher can sit at their desk with their feet up and not have to do anything. And then the students can do whatever they want, which typically doesn't involve learning how to read or write. They'll play flip cup, for God's sakes, at a table, or play ping pong or something, instead of actually learning how to read and write and making it engaging and making them focus on this and grinding it into them that reading, writing, and literacy and phonics are arguably the most important thing that a child can learn in school. But it's not. It's all this PBIS games and let's talk about transgenders and rainbow flag nonsense and let's color and whatever else. What a complete waste of time. And more people, again, are pulling their children out because they're making that basic connection. They look, again, you want to step into the mind of a school teacher, walk into their classroom. I've brought this up before, and I'm not going off on a tangent here, but if you really do want to get into the psyche of an elementary school teacher specifically, walk into a classroom, it is helter-skelter all over the walls. It looks like Charles Manson was in there doing God knows what. I mean, everything is on the walls. It is an ADHD, which isn't even real, but it would give someone who doesn't even have attention deficit disorder, so to speak, it would give them ADD, no doubt about it. Colors everywhere, shapes everywhere, all different messages everywhere, most of which the students can't even read. It's constant confusion. A million things to pay attention to in the classroom instead of the one thing they're supposed to be paying attention to, which is the teacher and then the book in front of them. Go back into the old times, into the one-room schoolhouses. Were there tchotchkes hanging off of the ceilings in one-room schoolhouses? Were there all these posters and all these models and shapes and all this crap all over the walls? No. Was there all this stuff written on the floor? Stand here, only step here, follow the snake on the floor, and that'll lead you out of the classroom and over to your little personal cubby. No, none of that existed. There were desks, there was a chalkboard, and one person at the front. And everybody faced the front, and everybody knew that this was the person you needed to listen to. That worked. But see, if you do that now, there's something wrong with you. When you walked into my classrooms, as a middle school, in particular, I should say, as a high school teacher. Now, as a middle school teacher, the only thing that I had up on the walls as a health teacher were the actual final project of what my students were to do at the very end of the semester. So all year long, all semester long rather, they were seeing the thing that I wanted them to create. And their job was to take an entire subject that I taught them in the health curriculum and then create an instructive poster about it and then give us a written presentation about said poster. They could have video that they wanted to show. They could play audio if they wanted to do that. I mean, they could get as elaborate as they wanted to. But that was the only thing I had on the walls in that classroom. When I was teaching math and science, I had nothing on the classroom walls. Zero. Absolutely nothing. I wanted them to listen to me, look at the front board, look at the room, my PowerPoint presentations, the things I was showing them on an actual old school overhead projector. Remember those bad boys? I was using one of those. And then when I became a high school teacher, same thing. I had nothing on the walls. There was nothing dangling from the ceiling like, what are those mobile things that babies look at when they're in a crib? I mean, it's beyond ridiculous. All the attention, my point is this. All of the attention is always on other stuff rather than the thing they're supposed to be doing. That's it. That's why you have a 38% literacy rate. I would even argue that that's probably a little too generous. I would venture to guess that percentage has been fudged a little. Again, a 20% gap in the racial disparity, quote unquote, when it comes to literacy in the state of Ohio. Well, who's to blame for that? A lot of people are to blame, but money isn't going to fix it. Money never fixes it. It's focus, it's objectivity, having the right people use the right tool for the right job. It's a round peg into a square hole with a spatula. That's what they're doing here. That's what they're doing. And that's the business in a nutshell. And it's not an accident. That's being done on purpose. That's the part that educators can't for the life of them figure out what is going on. Why is it that everything is controlled and yet getting worse? Why is it that they're having to beg legislators for more and more money for something that won't get fixed? It's a purposeful dumbing down, as we all know. It's a purposeful control and a albatross over everything and everyone in the entire business. And those administrators acting like they're going to fix things, they're pawns in the game too, and they have no idea. Not a clue. Okay, let me shift gears now. Now I want to talk about something that's happening locally here that is highly illegal, highly unethical, and very, very nefarious, remarkably unprofessional. All of that is an understatement. Everything that I just said is a massive understatement. So let me do this first. I just want to quickly review with the local school district here in the town where I live. It's called Talawanda City Schools. It's in Oxford, Ohio. In one of the last board meetings, there were discussions regarding administrative salaries. And one of the things that they're attempting to do is dramatically increase, all administrative salaries in every school across the board. Now, you're talking about one high school, one middle school, and 3 elementary schools. Not a big school district by any stretch of the imagination. But either way, they're claiming, so saith the pathological gay liar of a superintendent. He openly stated in one of the last board meetings that the reason that administrators in the past had left was because of low pay. That they're all leaving because Talawanda doesn't pay enough for their administrators. Well, as it turns out, that statement is a complete and utter lie. None of that is true. Now, again, why is he attempting to pay administrators more money? It's not because they need more money. They certainly don't. They don't deserve it, number one. And number two, as it turns out, they are on par when it comes to the student population, the district size, and what an administrator would likely get paid here. It's perfectly in line with other surrounding districts based on size. It makes total sense leaving things the way that they are. But one of the things that will sometimes happen when a superintendent is on the way out is they will pay more people more money, in particular administrators specifically, while sticking it to other individuals and firing other people and whatever else, and not giving pay raises other places. But they'll pay administrators more to keep them around because he doesn't want to engage in any kind of search committee for looking for other administrators. He just wants them to stay right where they are and keep them satisfied. But what he also wants to do is make those pay raises permanent so that if he leaves, that pay remains the same for X amount of time. So that's not an unusual move for a superintendent to pay their like-minded administrators more money on their way out the door themselves if they choose to leave. So all of that was a giant lie, as it turns out. The charts were publicly released. People could clearly see that this individual was lying and that Talawanda City School administrators were making exactly what they should be making based on what everybody in the surrounding area is making based on student population. Superintendents lying comes with the job. You have to be a liar to be a superintendent. You have to. You can't possibly be objective. And if you are, they'll run you out of town. The school board will say, well, you're being too honest and we can't share that kind of information and this is not a good thing. And then again, they buy out your contract and they cut you loose. So there's far more going on in the school district as you might expect. It's never just one thing. The school district is also under at least 2 federal lawsuits, specifically, if memory serves, pertaining to, of course, student violence and the sexual assault of at least one student, which I've brought up here on the show, at the hands of an individual who no longer works in the district, but was never prosecuted for their crime, which means this individual is running around the United States someplace, potentially preying on minors wherever they go, because they're a sexual predator. So, there's that. Now I'll mention this. In the mail this past week, I received some anonymous documentation regarding the school district. One of them was an email memo, or a letter, I should say, that went out to parents and guardians in the school district back in April. And this is from the high school nurse and administrators. And it was specifically, this particular note was written by a Taylor, Bystrom is their last name. I don't know who sent me these documents, and if they're listening to the show, thank you for sending me these documents, along with an email here, which I'm going to read from the teachers union, which is remarkably nefarious. But I want to read this document first from the school nurse, because this right here, ladies and gentlemen, it cannot get clearer as to what's really happening, and how these people have absolutely no idea why they're in the actual state of affairs that they are in now, and how all of this bioweapon rollout that they blindly went along with is now backing up on them, therefore introducing new health programs because, well, we're seeing some health disparities and we're seeing children dropping dead, and we need to do whatever we can to keep kids safe, as they so like to say. So here's the memo, or the letter again, that went out to parents and guardians. Dated April 12th of this year, 2024. It says, quote, "Dear parents, guardians, Talawanda High School is pleased to inform you we are well on our way to becoming a heart-safe designated school. In collaboration with Cincinnati Children's Heart Institute and Project ADAM, ADAM. This designation means our staff has a practiced plan in place to respond to a sudden cardiac arrest on the Talawanda High School campus." Now, why would that be? What's the one thing that's happened in the last 3 to 4 years, specifically 3 years, that is directly related to heart attacks, specifically among children or teenagers and staff members? What is it? It goes on, it says the latest national statistics indicate that more than 350,000 children and adults across the U.S. suffer cardiac arrest every year. Children and adults. Children. Through our cooperative efforts with Cincinnati Children's Heart Institute and Project ADAM, we have joined thousands of schools in preparing our school for a cardiac emergency. This program enables us to offer any person who may experience a sudden cardiac arrest the best chance for survival. I'm afraid not. It says a final step in receiving the Heart Safe School certification is to conduct a cardiac emergency drill. There you go. Do you see what they do here? Do you see what's happening? It's more work. They roll out a bioweapon not knowing it's a bioweapon, thinking it's a vaccine under the guise of being a preventative medicine when in fact it isn't. They open up their doors on a Saturday to jab as many people in the surrounding area as humanly possible. They consistently, in every board meeting and memo and every other thing that they send out from 2021 through now, make sure and stay updated on your COVID shots, your flu shots, your RSV shots, all these shots, your shingles shot, and shot yourself right in the brain if you have to until your eyes pop out of your head. And oh, by the way, somebody has a heart attack, don't worry, we'll be there to scoop their body off the ground, give them a nice jolt so they can ride the lightning, and then all of a sudden we'll throw them in the back of a car and we'll pat ourselves on the back like we did the right thing. These people are insane because they make work. They don't stop, they don't think that their actions have reactions and consequences, and that those reactions and consequences cause them to adopt policies, programs, launder money, do whatever it is that they do, and they don't understand that by adding more things, the likelihood of people missing a step or not doing a particular thing is far higher than if they just didn't have it in the first place. It's absolutely ridiculous. These people make work for themselves with every action that they engage in. There are 20 more things behind that action that they now have to implement because of their said action at the word go. It goes on here. It says, we plan on performing this short drill the week of May 6th, 2024. The drill will involve our faculty, nurse leadership, and school administration. Representatives from Cincinnati Children's Heart Institute and our local EMS will also be on site to provide support and feedback. Now they're not just doing shooting drills, ladies and gentlemen, and fake dead kids on the floor with gunshot wounds. Now they're doing fake drills for heart attack victims from the COVID shots. But they don't know it's the COVID shots. But it's the COVID shots. because it's a biological weapon designed to kill people. And it's working. It says our primary goal with this partnership is to make our school as safe as possible for your students, our staff, and all community members who enter our doors. Oh, the irony. A carefully coordinated response to cardiac emergencies has been proven to reduce death and disability in school settings and help to ensure an appropriate response to a stressful and life-threatening situation. Please reach out with any questions or concerns about this upcoming drill. Sincerely, Taylor Bystrom, Talawanda High School nurse and administrators, unquote. No, if you wanted a safe environment, you wouldn't have rolled out a shot, multiple shots, on staff members and children, and you can't even name a single ingredient. Again, we've all seen the meme and the irony. The very environment that we grew up attending, telling us to not believe strangers and not talk to strangers, not listen to strangers, don't take drugs and don't fall for peer pressure. Without thinking, blinking, or snapping their fingers, they engaged in all of that instantly in 2020 and 2021 without thought, without any thought or question as to whether or not what they were doing was wrong and didn't need to happen. Now you have more jabbed staff members, more jabbed students than ever before. The only other environment that I can think of that is more jabbed or equally as jabbed as a school environment with all of the electromagnetism shedding taking place and constant illness is an actual hospital itself. Perhaps an Amazon factory. But you get what I'm saying. Any place where you have a large area with close-quartered individuals all hovering around one another where taking the shots was considered the norm, if not downright mandatory, so they thought. Well, these are not safe environments by default. But now we have cardiac drills taking place in American schools. Unbelievable. Now there's this correspondence which was sent to me, and this is a copy of an email that is going out from what appears to be a school employee, potentially working in the district office, if I'm not mistaken, although I don't know that. But it's an email that's gone out to Talawanda staff members, including the teachers union. So it appears. Again, I could have some of this wrong, but it appears this way. And it's a 3-page email, or a 2-page email, and here's what it says. And I'll get into this more specifically, but, well, actually, I'll just do this first. Here's sort of the overall umbrella point of this entire email. There is a policy that exists in place in this school district, and you can't make this up. I mean, this is how stupid these people are. There is a policy that exists in place that allows the superintendent to basically be a complete tyrant over communication. So as elected officials and as school board members, by law, again, keep in mind, school board policy is not law. It's not state law. There is state law for elected officials and then policies, blah, blah, blah. But policies don't matter. There is only the law. That's what matters. School districts hate the law. They can't stand it, which is why they make policy and then they breathe a sigh of relief and say, well, our policy protects us. It doesn't protect them from shit because there's the law. So when an individual is an elected official by the people, in particular in a school district, anybody has the right to email school district members, specifically school board members, because they are elected officials. Anybody has the right to do that. Anyone. The superintendent, however, and the policy that exists within this district apparently dictates that any communication to a school board member from the public or even from an employee in the district has to first go through the superintendent. So if I was a school district employee and I wanted to email person A, who is an elected school board official, I would have to email the superintendent and say, can you please move this to this school board member? Because I have a question about this. Now, you don't have to be a genius to figure out why that's a policy. You can take a pretty good guess as to why that would be the case. The superintendent wants to receive emails from the public or from school employees for a number of reasons. Control is one of them. Retribution is another. And then at the exact same time, he wants to monitor what the concerns are among the public so that he can determine what he says publicly and what he doesn't say, what he shares with school board members and what he doesn't. The guy is a gay tyrant. And he has way too much just for men hair dye on his mustache. It's disgusting. I'm not kidding. Like, these degenerate people, they look degenerate, they sound degenerate, they are degenerate, which means what are they going to do when it comes to the workplace and their behavior? Is it all of a sudden going to be morally sound and ethical? Of course not. Of course not. It's not the way it works. Degenerate people in their private lives or degenerate people in their public lives and in their so-called professional lives. This is what happens. This is the world we live in. So here's what this email says. It says, good morning. It says, those of you who either attended or watched the last school board meeting heard an exchange between Dr. Thoreau and Mrs. King around communications from Talawanda employees to board members. Dr. Thoreau is the superintendent, and Mrs. King is the new female school board member who is ethically sound, asking questions. I've brought her up on the show before. And she's the one, again, doing her job as an elected public official. Now, as you would expect, when you sprinkle a little morality and values and ethics on top of a group of gays who have no idea what the hell they're doing, can't even tie their own shoes, and probably have prion disease from the shots, well, that's going to piss them off real good. But it goes on here. It says, in light of that discussion regarding, again, communications from employees to board members, it says it seems like a good time to reiterate policies, rules, and Teacher Education Association suggestions about communication, or communications plural, with with board members. It says it is very important to keep in mind that you should never consider any communications with school board members to be private or confidential. Any written communications, whether by email, text, letter, telegram, carrier pigeon, etc., are considered public records and subject to disclosure to anyone making a public records request. There is a school board policy that addresses staff communications with school board members. It is policy number 3112. It requires that communications from staff members to the board, or its committees shall be submitted through the superintendent. The superintendent shall forward such communications received from staff members to the board. This procedure is not intended, this is the hilarious part, this procedure is not intended to deny any staff member his or her constitutional right of free speech or the right to appeal to or otherwise address the board on important matters through established procedures. It's, well, of course it is. And this is the funny part about school districts. They'll slap you in the face and say, now, we aren't slapping you. This was simply a hand on your cheek with our open hand and our fingers at a certain rate of speed. But this was not a slap, and we were not slapping you, so don't tell people we were slapping you. We were simply placing our hand and fingers in an open position across your face at a certain rate of speed. We're not violating your constitutional right to free speech to communicate with individuals that you elected, that you voted for, whether you did or didn't, and you have a concern about something. And we're not telling you you can't communicate with them, but we're telling you that you can't communicate with them. But that's not a violation of the First Amendment. They're sociopaths, ladies and gentlemen. They're just sociopaths. It goes on here. It says, so, quote, one way to address school board members would be to send Ed an email, the superintendent, and ask him to pass it on to the school board. I'm not recommending you do this, but it is a permitted option. Obviously, in this case, Ed will read the communication, and it will need to be very carefully written and very professional. There are also First Amendment rights of free speech which would allow you to bypass that process, but the Supreme Court has limited those for employees of the government. So while we still have those rights, they are subject to limitations, including a complex multi-part test. This test is a series of questions to determine whether or not your speech is acceptable and designed to differentiate your speech as a citizen and that as an employee of the district. But there are inconsistencies in how courts have interpreted these tests, and even a Supreme Court case that seems to have limited our public employee speech even further than the tests had limited it. Now, as it turns out, at least this was sent to me, as it turns out, the so-called Supreme Court case that they're referencing in this entire fiasco has absolutely nothing to do with this whatsoever. Apparently, the legal case has something to do with cell phone usage, if I'm getting this correct, and it has to do with, again, how you use your cell phone within communicating with individuals who, again, are so-called government officials or government employees back and forth. Again, anybody has the right to communicate with any school board member. Again, we're not talking about the DOJ and the FBI. I mean, people need to stay focused. This is a school board. So yes, employees get to ask questions to school board members in any capacity. They can ask them as a school teacher. They can ask them as a voting citizen. It doesn't matter. They're trying to make some distinction between the two, and it's completely irrelevant. This is, again, being done as a intimidation tactic and even a retribution tactic on the part of the superintendent. Because, of course, what do they do after that then? Well, they get an email that they don't like asking a particular question. They make sure that the question never makes its way to the school board member who again, is there to field these kinds of questions. And then the retribution falls back on the individual conducting the email in the first place within the actual working environment, in one bullying tactic or another, regardless of the method that they use. Again, unfortunately, back in 2020 and 2021, this was when many school districts relinquished power as school board members specifically and gave it blindly over to superintendents. Because school board members didn't want to receive emails anymore. Because what kinds of emails were they receiving? They weren't exactly kind, were they? Why is my kid wearing a mask? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Why did you throw my kid out of school for coughing once? Why are they suspended now? Blah, 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 blah. And then eventually, as school board members, and it wasn't unique just here, although it happened here, I wrote a series of Substacks about it actually back when it happened on my Substack channel. But it happened all across the nation. They instantly said, we don't want to field these emails anymore, so we're not even going to respond to them. If anybody has any questions, ask the superintendent, they'll handle it. I mean, again, why even have a school board then? Why even have one? Your job is to communicate what it is that you're doing, what it is that you plan on doing. That's the whole point of the position. This email goes on, and it says, quote, this is to reiterate what we have said before. We discourage you from directly contacting board members. This is not because we wish to censor you or limit your speech, but because our first goal is to protect our ongoing employment and career. Well, there's an admission. Our goal is not to squash your First Amendment right. No. Our job is image protection. It's an open admission. Their job is to cover things up. That's what they're openly saying here. It goes on, it says, if you have concerns that you feel need to go to the board, please share it with your building reps. It might be a BLC issue or something we can take to Ed directly, the superintendent, or potentially something the Teacher Education Association, would take directly to the board. TEA, the Teacher Education Association, I assume that's what it stands for, has different legal rights that allows us to more freely address the board. All of that said, if you do want to email the board or follow the procedure listed in Board Policy number 3112, we would strongly encourage you to have me or Matt read it over for our feedback and suggestions. So this email is being written by what appears to be the union president, the teacher union president. If that's true and that's who this person is, then good God Almighty, that's even worse. Because now you're talking again about a union trying to control all the employees when it comes to communication. And ladies and gentlemen, unions are criminal organizations by default. That's why they were created. That's the point. It's not to keep everybody safe. It's the illusion of safety. It says, all of that said, blah, 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 I already said that. We would like to read it first and go over it and give you our feedback. I'm sure you would. It says, our goal is not to censor or limit what you can say, but to help protect you from potential district discipline. They're openly admitting that they will engage in retribution and retaliation against you. And we want to avoid that. Well, wait a minute. How about you just not do it? How about you just not be assholes? Is that so hard? Again, limiting your First Amendment right to free speech and open communication is exactly what they're doing. Now, yes, it should be common sense. If people know that you're emailing someone who is in a position within a company, which is what a school board is, it's a company, a school district is a company, it's a business, and it's a government one at that if you email them, then those emails are open to FOIA requests and 1,000 other things. If you have nothing to hide, why would you be emailing it? You wouldn't. If you have a basic inquiry and you're reaching out to an elected official for clarification or saying, hey, what the hell are you doing? We elected you. You're supposed to be doing this and you're not doing this. What the hell is your problem? And then those people don't email you back? Well, that's on them. That's indicative of a much larger problem. That's showing you their behavior as an elected official. So vote them out. Vote in somebody else. Or better yet, don't even participate and leave the school district. Certainly, as a parent with children in said district, that's what a logical person should do, but that's my 2 cents. It goes on, it says, blah, blah, blah. If you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to me or Matt. Thanks, David. Unquote. Okay. Again, is it a violation of your First Amendment right? Of course it is. They have to say it at least 3 times in their own email to say that it's not a violation, which means it's a violation. They're gaslighting people. And as a teachers union, they're trying to control how people who work within the district communicate with board members. They don't have that right. No one has that right. This is why I was never a member of a union until the very end of my career, and then I found out, oh yeah, unions are far more worthless than I thought they already were. Because once I was a member of a union, they didn't do anything for me. Nothing. They just stole my money. They stole approximately $1,000 from me. They were like, sign here, Sean. Okay, your union dues for the year, about $500. We take them out of paychecks and blah, blah, blah. And oh, by the way, in the future, if you want us to represent you in the next year after you resign and we force you out, well, then it'll be another $500. In fact, I think I only paid him once. I think I only cut him one check. And what a waste of money. So it was $500 some odd. But this right here again, this is what they do. And it's not just school-based environments rather where they do this. They do this everywhere. This is in all walks of life, in all professions. If I was an employee, now here's my advice part. If I was an employee in that school district, when it came to communicating with this person or that person, the first thing you have to do is you have to keep all email correspondence on your own personal home computer. You have to take screenshots of them. You have to print them out. You have to have electronic and hard copies, always. Never send an email to anybody without taking a copy of it or a screenshot of it, and then making sure that you have both an electronic copy on a home computer and a hard copy in a filing cabinet at home. It doesn't matter if you're emailing a parent. It doesn't matter if you're emailing a fellow employee. It does not matter. Every single piece of communication needs to be printed off for this reason alone. They're going to come after your ass. Always. This is what they do. This is the business. And then, of course, if I was you, I wouldn't be a member of a union in the slightest. I would revoke your union membership immediately and say, oh yeah, you play union games? I don't play union games. Go pound sand. And then email, as an employee, any school board member you want. Put your name in it. My name is so-and-so. I work in this building and I have a question. And I would like you to answer it, because you're the elected official who's supposed to be answering this question. If you want to move this to the superintendent and have him answer it, fine. But the answer should be coming from you too. Again, this is the role of a school board member. The role of a school board member is to field emails from anyone and everyone and answer them thoroughly. It's not to pass the buck or kick the can down the road or say, here, superintendent, you do it for me. No, that's the school board member's job because they're elected. That's the job. If they're so fat, stupid, and lazy that they don't want to answer an email, that's their problem. Which means, again, they should show everybody exactly what kind of a person they are. This is not complicated. But this is what happens in criminal organizations, is they seek to complicate the most basic forms of communication. Why? Because they don't want people finding things out that are actually going on within their buildings or in the surrounding areas with specific either, again, students or board members themselves or administrators or fellow teachers or anybody else. They don't want people to know. And the more people that know, the worse things get for them. If they just solved the problems when a problem came their way, there'd be no problems. You'd be eliminating problems, not making them worse with secrecy, lies, and all of this secret society behavior nonsense from both unions and degenerate superintendents and board members. So that's my interpretation of the documents. Again, thank you for sending them my way. I'm actually well aware that this is a constant thing that's going on. I'm in communications with individuals who are throughout and around and in the area. And if you have more that you want to send me, by all means, do it. I'll read it right here on the show and give you my 2 cents on what it all means. But again, a union can't exist if people pay into a union. So stop paying into the union and you'll stop being their slave. They'll come up to you and bully you into being in their union. Well, don't do it. So as you can tell clearly, I'm anti-union. I have been my whole life, have been my whole career. There's no reason to start now. I mean, again, show me what you've done for me lately. And unions don't do anything for anybody. It's collectivist nonsense. Only the sheep follow the wolves into their own home. And it's not a good idea. So, there you go. Okay. 2 jab-related things very quickly. One story and then a piece of audio, and then that'll wrap it up here. Reuters. This was from May 10th. Again, it's Reuters. It's owned by the Rothschilds, among others, I'm sure. Either way, here's the headline. It says, pandemic treaty talks will go on after missed deadline. Some progress, WHO says. Out of London, it says, talks to draw up a global pact to help fight future pandemics. There are no pandemics. Have ended, it says, without a draft agreement by the expected deadline, but progress has been made, the World Health Organization said on Friday. Negotiations from the WHO's 194 member states were hoping to have a final draft agreement by the end of Friday, with a view toward adopting the legally binding text at the World Health Assembly later this month, which I believe is going to take place on the 23rd, is when that so-called pandemic treaty vote is going to occur. I also saw this, by the way. This was interesting. There was a video of a lawyer who walked into the WHO headquarters and handed them cease and desist letters regarding the shots and their treaty and so on and so on. And he was rather proud of himself and said, I've officially handed them cease and desist letters. They're now in possession of these documents, and they're going to have to do this or else. Ladies and gentlemen, when you walk into the devil's den and you tell the devil to stop doing the thing that he does and was created to do, good luck. Good luck. Cease and desist letters aren't going to do anything for the WHO. They don't care. They have a mission. They are there for a very specific reason, and it is depopulation through sickness and death. That is their entire point. That's why they were created. So this Reuters article, I think, is just nonsense. I don't buy it in the slightest. They've had this document ready to go for a long time. It's still ready to go. Now the question is going to come as to whether or not countries are going to adopt it and who's going to be the boot that stomps on the neck of your average citizen. We know fully, unfortunately, that hospital conglomerates and companies and doctors' offices are going to adopt whatever this is. They're going to adopt these policies, whether they be lockdowns, more mask wearing, mandatory shot taking, you name it. We also know, again, that businesses are likely to do it, certainly the larger ones. So we're going to keep an eye on this, of course, and continue to bring this to multiple people's attention, but there you go. Okay, I think personally it's just a fake story to throw people off and to make it sound like they don't have their ducks in a row. I think they know exactly what's going on, and they know exactly what they have planned and what they want to do. Finally, there is this piece of audio here from a postpartum whistleblower nurse and what she saw in the hospital setting where she worked. This is from Dr. Makis's Substack page. This was from just a few days ago. Her name is Michelle Spencer. She's on the Children's Health Defense Jab bus, and it was titled Postpartum Nurse Whistleblower on Fetal Demise of Vaxxed Moms. Her own mom was killed by hospital protocols, it says. This is 19 minutes long. I'm going to play this right now. Give this a listen here in 3, 2, 1.
And what kind of a nurse are you?
I'm a postpartum nurse. I take care of newborn babies.
All right, and you want to talk about what happened during COVID. So in your own words, just go ahead and tell us.
Well, it's kind of a long story. I'll make it as short as possible. But my mom was murdered by the hospital COVID protocols in 2021. I took her to the hospital, and from that point on, they just unleashed a series of protocols, and she was tied to the bed, and they knocked her teeth out and gave her remdesivir against her will and did all kinds of things against her will. So the whole time I was fighting to get in to save my mother, because I am a nurse and I am completely capable of saving her. And they would not let me in. They insisted that it's our policy, you can't come in. And I have never fought so hard for anything in my life. And my mother was my best friend. So she was murdered November 29th, 2021. She took her last breath. And I went into this dark depression. And when this happened, this is when the shots had rolled out a few months before, and everybody was kind of in this trance, like, get your vaccine. And, everyone was they were criticizing the ones who didn't get the vaccine, and they constantly asked why my mom didn't get the vaccine, and it was just crazy. Everything was crazy. So, and I worked at postpartum before the vaccines came out. I worked there for 1 year, and I took care of newborn babies. And when I first started working on postpartum, we would have moms come in, deliver their babies, and for the most part, they were healthy, and they would go home. And, the babies were fine. The moms were fine. Weren't any crazy medical conditions going on. And then when I started working there, I had to poke babies a lot, like to check their blood sugars. And they wanted me to give hepatitis B vaccines. And, I wasn't comfortable with that. I gave one hepatitis B vaccine during orientation, and I complained to my mom about it. I said, I do not like that. I don't feel right doing that. And she said, do not quit. Those babies need you, and you're saving them. And so I took that. I'm like, okay, Mom, I'm not going to quit then. I took that as an opportunity. So instead of quitting, I started I did a lot of research on hepatitis B vaccines at that point. And I realized that hepatitis B comes from, if the mom has it herself, she could technically pass it to her baby. Or if you have sex with someone who has hepatitis B, you could potentially get it. And so when I learned that, and I learned that there's aluminum and formaldehyde in these hepatitis B shots, I was completely disgusted. I'm like, why are we giving these to newborns? So instead of quitting, because my mom told me not to, I started telling parents why you should not get hepatitis B vaccines for your newborns. So now, I provide informed consent to these parents, and most of the time, after they listen to me, they decline the hepatitis B shot. So that was kind of a blessing in disguise. And then, I heard that these COVID shots were going to start rolling out, and that they're going to start giving them to pregnant women. And I did not feel right about this at all. I already learned the dangers of the hepatitis B vaccines, and I have already been injured by a flu shot in the past. So I'm feeling like, okay, this is going to be extremely dangerous for these pregnant women, for these babies. And then March 2021 came around, and these women started coming to the hospital, full term, ready to deliver their baby. And they would put the monitors on them, and they'd find that their baby was dead. This was happening a lot after March of 2021. And I was just being really observant and noticing that a lot of these babies that were being delivered, already passed away. It appeared that the mothers had received the COVID vaccine like 1 week prior. So before the COVID vaccines ever came out, we would have one fetal demise every 2 or 3 months in the hospital. If we deliver 15 to 20 babies a day, I'm not sure how many per month, but if we have one every couple of months that passed away inside, that's a very low number compared to the amount we have per day that are born every day. So then these shots started coming out, and every time I'd come to work, there would be one fetal demise. And a fetal demise is a baby that passed away normally after 20 weeks, like closer to full term. And so, I was feeling like disgusted. I'm like, why are these babies dying? Every time I come to work, I'm seeing that there's one on the board, and nobody's saying anything about it. I start asking people like, hey, there's something going on. And nurses are like, no, it's weird. I don't know. I guess maybe it's pesticides. The moms aren't as healthy these days. Global warming, like you hear everything, but nobody wants to talk about the elephant in the room. And so these babies keep dying. I come to work and I see dead babies. And then my mom passes away in November 2021, a couple months after the shots had rolled out, a couple months after
She did not get a shot.
No. And that's the thing. When she went to the hospital, they kept asking me, why didn't your mom get the COVID vaccine? I said, she can't. She's allergic to vaccines. But even if she's not, who cares? My mom's life still mattered. You can't just say, oh, you're not vaccinated, so you're going to die now. Like, I'm going to poison you with remdesivir, tie you down, and shove a metal tube down your throat. Like, you can't do that to people. That's completely evil. And so, my mom passed away. I still go to work. I still see these dead babies. I even want to quit more now because I'm like, I'm tired of going to work. I'm tired of being alive, actually, and my best friend is gone. And but I hear my mom's voice say in the back of my mind, do not quit. Those babies need you and you're saving them. So I'm like, okay, mom, I keep going. And then in September of 2022, I get to work and I see this email. And I was completely disgusted by this email. After I read this email, I couldn't even work for 6 hours straight. I was trying, but my head's just everywhere. And in the email, it said, as you all know, there's been an increase in fetal demises, and in the month of August, there were 22 of them. And that makes for a record number for the amount in July of 2021. So, and then it keeps saying, it should have said something like, because of this increase in fetal demises, we should figure out what is going on. It didn't say anything like that. It said because of the increase in fetal demises, we need to brush up on our policies and learn how to handle a dead baby's body. So I was like, I'm not brushing up on any of your damn policies. I'm so sick of policies, because that's all I heard when my mom was in the hospital is, you can't come in because it's our policy. I want people to start using their brains, start being connected to each other, start having feelings for other human life. Like, I don't understand why a policy should ever override human life. And so I took that email and I sent it to a friend who's affiliated with Children's Health Defense. And it's just so crazy how I even had that connection with her in the moment, because I didn't even think about the fact that she had connections to where that email would actually get out at all. I am in my head when I sent that email, I wasn't really thinking about it at all. I feel like that was just God's work right there, because if my mom had not been murdered the way that she was, I don't know if I would have had the open mind to really consider what that email was at all. And so I believe it was that fight in me that I sent it off. And from there, it went viral. And then, I continued to go to work, and people were the same. So I kept asking, like, if, what's going on? Why are these babies dying? And it was the same thing at work. So the more I spoke out, I guess I was spreading awareness. And then in November of 2022, I was in the Died Suddenly documentary. So then my work caught on and they realized I had shared this email. So in December, they had a meeting with me and they said, are you aware that it's against company policy to copy and paste an internal document? And I said, why are you wasting your resources investigating why I copy and pasted an internal document? You guys need to be investigating why babies are dying. And then they just got kind of quiet. And then I said, I have rights as a whistleblower, and you guys should do something. And then at that point, they were like, okay, you can go back to work.
So you're still back at work?
I still work there. Yes.
Okay, I have a few questions. So,
okay.
Fetal demise is just horrific.
Yes.
What about those that took the shot and had their babies? Have you been seeing anything that's wrong with the babies different from before the shot?
Absolutely. So a lot of the babies are having cardiac issues. A lot of them. One of them was just born the other day and had to be transferred and have like an open heart surgery. And then a lot of babies are having echocardiograms done where they do the ultrasound on the heart to check for the pumping mechanism, because they're finding that something is abnormal. And then there's respiratory issues, and there's a lot of babies going to the NICU. But for sure, heart.
Do they still vaccinate those babies with Hep B, those sick ones?
Yes, they do. Yeah. And so I really try hard to not talk them out of it, but I give them true informed consent. Once they have all the information, they usually put 2 and 2 together. But a lot of nurses just see it as a checklist. So they will offer the hepatitis B just to get their job done. And I try to provide the information to the other nurses too. And a few of them have also opened their eyes after listening to me.
Now, in the mothers that come in that have not had the COVID shot, are you seeing any of these issues?
Not quite. No, I haven't been seeing a lot of babies with cardiac issues when they don't have the shot, but it's kind of hard to tell on some of them if they've had the shot or not. But I can tell you that we're here in California, they're highly vaxxed because a lot of them have a certain doctor, like a clinic that they go to, and they push the vaccine really hard. So a lot of the patients that come in are usually vaxxed with COVID.
Now, what about the new RSV shot? Are you seeing complications with that, the pregnant women getting the RSV shot?
Not that I know of, because we haven't started giving that. I haven't really heard of anybody getting that in our hospital yet.
So what do you recommend? If you were, okay, let's put it this way. If you were having a baby, would you have your baby in hospital?
No, I would find a midwife. And I know that there's, like here in Fresno, there's a Fresno birth and baby. They have doulas and midwives there that are highly recommended. So I would definitely have, if possible, I would have your baby at home. Eventually, I want to be a midwife myself, but I'm just not there yet. But I would love to deliver babies at home because we need that. We need moms to gain their power back.
All right, let's go back to your mum now. Can we talk about your mum for a second?
Yes.
So did you take her to hospital?
I did.
Did she start with the pulse thing on her hand, on her finger?
Yes.
So that was the first thing that you saw the stat.
Yes. So she had been sick for 10 days and at home, and I had been taking care of her, but I had also recently been sick. So I was still so completely drained. It was really hard for me to try to be there 100% with her. So I was bringing her vitamins and water and doing things for her around the house, trying to get her strength back. But after day 10, she had called her friend, and her best friend was like, please take her to the hospital. I can't stand the thought of losing my best friend. And my mom agreed to go at that point. And I knew that people are going into the hospital and not coming out. But I was like, okay, well, she'll be okay. She just needs oxygen. I wasn't aware of the dangers of remdesivir all the way yet. I knew it was not a good idea, but I didn't know completely why. And so when I dropped her off, I said, make sure you tell them not to give you remdesivir and that you just need oxygen. And then, so her sats were in the high 70s when I checked her sats when she was walking at home. So when she got to the hospital, they put 2 liters of oxygen on her on just a simple nasal cannula, and her sats went up to 95%. So I was like, okay, she's going to be fine. She just needs oxygen. She'll be there a couple days and then she'll be better and she'll come home. And then at 2 a.m, after she had already told them when she got there, do not give me remdesivir. There's even a social work consult and a note that says, do not give patient any medications without consulting with her RN daughter first, per patient's request. They gave her remdesivir at 2 a.m. that first night that she was there. And then I didn't know about it and she didn't know about it. And then 4 days go by, she keeps getting remdesivir and neither one of us know about it. And then on day 4 is when she completely declined. She stopped answering my calls and my texts and just got really sick, and her oxygen needs kept increasing. And when I called that night, I said, what are you giving her? They named off all these medications and then they said remdesivir. And I said, why are you giving that to her? She told you not to give that to her. And they said, well, it's our protocol. And I said, well, don't give her any more. And they said, this is the last dose that she got. It was today. And so at that point, my heart sank. I knew at that point my mom was going to die, because at that point I had learned that remdesivir was toxic to your kidneys. It shuts them down. It fills up your lungs with fluid, causing the patient to have higher oxygen needs. And then so they keep increasing the oxygen, which is like blowing this pressure in their face for hours at a time. And it just shuts everything down. It completely makes your body go in the opposite direction. And so if they had just given her oxygen, like she said in the beginning, she would still be here.
Were you with her when she died?
In the last 15 minutes. They finally let me in the last 15 minutes.
Were you shocked by her appearance?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She went in. My mom was beautiful. She was 6 feet tall. She was about 180 pounds, redhead, curly hair. She's just like vibrant. And then when I took her to the hospital, obviously she looked sick, but she was, she looked not next to death. And then when I got there, she had been completely stripped of all her dignity, and her skin was hanging off of her. and she was pale. Her eyes had been rolling back, and her hair was matted. She was laying in her mess. Like, they didn't even want to go in there and take care of her. I don't think she even had one bed bath or any kind of personal hygiene care at all. If I had been there with her, I would have taken care of all of that. I would have stayed with her in the hospital the entire time.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anything else you want to say about these two Peters' demise and your mother?
That my mom made that sacrifice in that hospital to die in that manner. Watching your own mother die the way that happened was a nightmare. I never wish on anybody. But I truly believe that she made a loving sacrifice, that she did that because she did it for you, for your babies, because she knew that doing that would light something in me to speak out. I have spoken out so much, and I want people to stop vaccinating their children with these toxic ingredients. Stop putting toxins in your body. Please just learn from my mom's sacrifice that we don't have to poison our bodies to be healthy. What we need to do is be more connected to each other, more loving to each other, take care of each other, and this world can be a better place. So my mom's murder was a sacrifice for your babies.
Did you get the hospital medical records?
Yes.
Were you horrified when you saw it?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Did they put how much she was worth dead? Did they put the price?
No, they didn't put that. But I know it's up there. I hear it's like close to $500,000 if they're elderly, if they were given the entire protocol from the moment they walk in to remdesivir to ventilator to all that, and Medicare, everything. $500,000.
So you're still back at work?
Yes.
And you're still warning parents, giving
Yes.
informed consent. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Thank you for what you do and speaking to us now.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a voice.
Is there how do people follow you?
So right now I'm on Facebook, Michelle Spencer. I also have a Facebook page called Healing Ground because I'm a healer at the same time. So if you're welcome to reach out. And I'm working on making a web page, an official web page, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, I would do that fast because they're going to take you down from Facebook. Most of the people listening now aren't even on Facebook.
Right,
so
I know.
Taken down. So you need to find somewhere else. All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.